I had no previous experience with that.
Scary?
It was very scary at first, but then by the end, I was actually really enjoying it, and I would just like create ads.
What's going on, everyone? Welcome to the Masters of Crowdfunding podcast. You got Mark Pakoda today, and a very exciting episode. I got to speak to Leonie Grundler, and she is the founder of Lioness Games and the creator behind Biome, which is a game that recently launched on Kickstarter. It did over 400,000, just squeaked by 400,000, over 6,000 backers, and this is her very first project, her very first game. And so in this episode, we walk through how she did it from the very beginning of how she lost her job to coming up with the game, and in that time, making it actually a reality, everything that went into playtesting it, to launching it, all the marketing behind it, mistakes that were made. And so really, really interesting episode. You know, it's not only if you are looking at launching your own game, but just launching your own project in general on Kickstarter. I think you'll get a lot out of it. So I hope you enjoy this episode today with Leonie Grundler. All right, Leonie, welcome to the podcast. We're excited to have you.
Thank you, Mark. Excited to be here.
Awesome. Well, excited to dive in today. And first question right off the bat is, tell us a little bit more about how you got started or how you created Biome. Like, what was the story, the creation story behind it?
Yeah, thanks for asking. So, 2 years ago, if someone had said I would make a board game, I'd be like, in your dreams. Like, that's crazy. There's no way. Even though I've been a long time board game fan and been playing board games pretty much my whole life and love games, actually starting a game, crowdfunding, starting a business, everything was such a foreign idea. Anyways, so summer 2022, me and one of my best friends are playing a ton of Wingspan, as many people do. And I had the idea, what if there were snakes that could eat the eggs from other players? And I was like, that would be such a fun game. Like, but there could be biodiversity, could be the jungle and plants and animals. And so the idea for this game came to mind. And that was like the birth idea for Biome. And it wasn't until a few months later, I had been laid off and was taking some time to figure out what I wanted to do next. And I was visiting friends in Berlin, and they told me they were thinking about starting to design a game. So I was like, what? Like, people can do that? People can make a game. And then I got sick with COVID and had to quarantine. And I realized this is the time I'm going to make a game. And even though I was sick with COVID, from like 6 a.m. until midnight, every day I was working on making the cards, coming up with the actions, choosing, cool plants and animals I wanted in the game. So talk about silver linings. It's all kind of a chain of events that, led me to start working on this game. And then I had so much fun with it. I'm very lucky to have a really supportive partner who's also an entrepreneur. And so I think with he's like, let me look into the business side of things. It's like, wow, Leonie, this is such, board games is a huge industry. Let's try to make this happen. And so he helped me start the company Lioness Games just a few months later.
That's awesome. So prior to you having this, I guess, like this idea of a game that you could make from playing Wingspan, like, did you have any exposure to the board game industry in general from like a business perspective?
No, I would say kind of the biggest, the main exposure, if any, that I had was probably in just seeing the board game industry and world was in 2019 when I went to my first Essen Spiel. As you can imagine, right? World's biggest board game convention, seeing all the stands, like that left such an impression on me that I never thought I would ever be an exhibitor there. And I won last year, which is crazy.
Oh, so really nice.
Yeah. And so,
That's
but
awesome.
Until that moment, I had never had any experience. My background's actually hospitality. So I first started working in hotels, and then I pivoted into hospitality tech. And yeah, now I'm in board games industry.
All right. I'm so interested, like, to go from you have no, official background in board games besides just being a player yourself, or an attendee of a convention or conventions, right? To going to launching this very successful game on Kickstarter in like a very short amount of time from, basically in a few years, right? How did you actually like learn how to create the game itself? Like, what was that process like?
Yeah, I would say, so for me, what helped was I had a theme, right? Nature and biodiversity. And the main mechanic, I love tableau builders, Everdell, Wingspan, Splendor, sort of, to name a few. So I knew, okay, and this is the frame that I want to start with. And then I was like, okay. And then figuring out everything else in between, I would say, I just started with the prototype and then play testing and iterating and play testing. So by the time I had decided I'm going to make a board game, within 2 weeks, I had a prototype and my first playtest. And then, so I had my first playtest in November 2022, and pretty much have been playtesting all the way through December of 2023.
Let's walk me through, like, what did that prototype look like? Like, how do you go from, okay, I have my theme, I have the main mechanic, and it sounds like you're kind of modeling other games, right? Mm-hmm. To a certain extent. Then how do you go from that to 2 weeks later having a prototype? Like, what does that prototype even look like?
Yeah. So the prototype was basically a bunch of cutout cards. I, punched out my little resources that I had printed. I ordered some so you might know if you've seen any of the renders or photos of Biome that have these tiny little straw nests. Actually, I can show you here.
Right.
And so I got my first, already had tiny little straw nests that I got off of Etsy. So I think like the tactile experience is very important. So, I already took some little pieces from other board games. I swiped some components. And my first prototype was a beautiful mix of paper cutouts and little components from different board games. And I would say so I kind of knew, okay, I want to have a bunch of plant and animal cards. Let's figure out, the species. So AI art actually helped me come up with like the first art for the first prototype, which made it look already, beautiful. Well, much better than just like stick figure drawings, that's for sure. And then, so I brought everything together, came up with some actions that I thought could be fun, but has definitely evolved a lot since then, as you can imagine.
Definitely. Just looking at what the game looks like now, I will say that the little nests that you have, I got to see those at Gamma in person, are pretty awesome. It's just a nice touch. Yeah, I feel like there's a lot of creators that like they overthink what the prototype has to look like. But it's so important just to make that step, get the prototype, and then go into the actual playtesting. Can you talk about the playtesting process a bit? And a follow-up question would be, when did you know the game was good enough to say, okay, I'm ready to launch this?
Yeah, definitely took a lot of time to figure that out. But let me get back to part two. So I just lost my train of thought. Remind me of part one.
No worries. Yeah, part one of the question. I'll keep my questions to one part. So
Perfect.
Let's talk me through the playtesting process. Like, how did that work? How many people did you playtest it with? Even like, how long was it?
Yeah, that's a great question. So my first playtests were about 3 hours long. Like, thank you to my OG playtesters for bearing with me. They're my neighbors growing up from my childhood home, and they were all so supportive. And so they have been like my longest playtest group. So every month or two, I would go back to that core group and they'd be excited to see how it's changed. But I would really, play test with whoever I could. Friends, family, my dad's coworkers, like whoever I could find that were board game fans. I'm also very lucky that in the San Francisco Bay, we have a really strong community of board game designers, and multiple nights a month, you can actually there are meetups where you go and play test each other's games and provide feedback. So I feel very grateful that, I had the savings and I could say, okay, I'm going to really dedicate myself full time to this, because I don't know how people do it with other jobs or kids. Like, I can't imagine, because I just 3 to 4 times a week, I would host play tests or go and, organize play tests for Biome. And then during the day, I would be iterating, strategizing, all these kinds of things.
So what type of feedback were you looking for? Like, was there a structure to the questions that you were asking playtesters?
Yeah, I would say overall, I was looking for where are people the most frustrated and what brings people the most joy. And then that was kind of the core pillars. Then how can I lean more into what brings people joy and, see if there are workarounds for the frustrating bits. And it's so interesting how my perspective on game design has shifted since when I started. I was more stubborn in the beginning. I was like, no, I want the, resource exchange to be like this. But then when I realized, okay, I think I should be simplifying, let's make this easier for people to actually play the game, my perspective definitely shifted. Yeah. Does that answer your question?
That does answer my question. I love that simple framework that you put it through in terms of the feedback, what brings people joy and what brings people frustration when playing. I love that a lot. What are some things that you learned about game design? Maybe I know there's probably a million things, but the top piece of advice that you'd want to share for budding game designers?
Definitely just make the prototype and play test. Play test. And I think another piece of advice I could give is just because something doesn't work out right now doesn't mean that piece couldn't fit in well later. So for example, earlier on in the game playtest, in the earlier iterations of the game, I had briefly considered, what if actions could only be taken once, which is actually kind of a core mechanic in Biome that is definitely a unique mechanic to the game. But I was like, no, it doesn't fit well. I don't think, that doesn't really bring people joy. And then when I made a lot of other changes to the game, AIM had made actions stronger, all kinds of things. Then when I've revisited that idea, it actually fit perfectly, right? This way, no actions were overpowered. They could only be taken once. So, while I had dismissed an idea earlier on, doesn't mean don't forget about it. Maybe it'll fit really well later on in your game design process.
I love that. It's like saying goodbye isn't saying goodbye forever. It's like going in this other pile for a little bit. It's like, maybe exactly. You come back in when the time is right. Okay, thank you for satiating my curiosity about how you went into actually making this. So let's say the second part of my question was how did you know it was basically done, and now is the time to move on to launching? And maybe, well, I don't know, you tell me, was the game done and you're like, all right, now it's time to launch? Or was there another point where you're like, all right, it's time to launch and I'm going to keep working on my game?
Yeah, that's such a tough question. For several months, some of my friends were like, you can ship it. And people would tell me, oh, when I played this is something I would expect to already buy in the store. You're telling me you're still playtesting this? But I knew that it was not ready yet. I think it was only after many more play tests when people are telling me, oh, I could play this again right now, or I can't wait to play again. When I was hearing that many, many times, that's when I started to feel like, okay, it's ready. And, I'm still making tiny tweaks here and there to the final designs before we send them off. But the gameplay itself is done, which I'm very happy with.
Got it. It's like put through your framework of like what's bringing you joy or what's bringing you frustration. It's like when it's like 95% joy or something.
Exactly.
I'm like such like a I want things to be quantifiable, but at the same time I do understand there's like a intuitive like feeling aspect of it. But it sounds like when it's way more joy, let's go with the launch.
Yeah.
So tell me about why did you choose to go crowdfunding?
Yeah. So I think after I realized I want to publish this game, we explored the typical options. Either, you sign with a publisher and you typically will get 5% of royalties, but then you don't have to worry about anything. Or you can attempt to crowdfund and sell direct to consumer. Well, you can sell directly to consumer, and crowdfunding is one way of doing that. And, we talked to a lot of people, and I think because Biome is my baby, I felt like I wasn't ready to just sign it away. I was like, let me at least give it a shot. Now's the time. I want a learning journey. So let's go the crowdfunding route. I know it's going to be a lot of work, but, this way I can also retain the highest margins. Because think about it. If you sell $1 million worth of games, which is really hard to do, and you've signed your game away to a publisher, you're only going to earn $50,000 for selling $1 million worth of games. So yeah, that's why we decided to go the crowdfunding route. And I am so happy we did, because as you know, we hit the 400K on Kickstarter, which was amazing. And I was so touched to see the number of people who are complete strangers rally behind this game, get so excited about the stretch goals, cheer on in the comments, like, we got this, we can do this. Like, thank you for making this game. That was so rewarding. And I think, there's no other, it's hard to get that kind of, there's no other place really where you can have that experience except for crowdfunding.
Right. I agree. Also, just because games in general is such a massive category when it comes to crowdfunding, it's the biggest one on Kickstarter. For people that are launching games, I don't know a better route for the majority of them.
Oh, there is none. Yeah.
It's pretty amazing. You just squeaked by the $400,000, $240, and 6,043 backers. I'm looking at your campaign right now, which is, it's a lot of people. It's pretty amazing. It's like you can look at the number in terms of dollar value, which I feel like is what most people focus on. But if you look at the number of people, like that's so many people that are going to experience the game, which I think is super cool. And, I want to, of course, I want to look at the, the very first day you did, I don't have the number up in front of me. I think around 50,000.
I think that sounds right.
Yeah, I'm looking at the graph right now. Can you walk through just the pre-launch process in general? Like what goes into getting your game ready to launch on Kickstarter so that it is even capable of raising $50,000 in one day?
Right. So I'd say many factors. Launch boom being the biggest one. So I am so happy that I got to join the Launch Boom community and, this amazing framework with the deposits to get, early, to get people locked in and excited about the game and much more likely to convert, right? So I don't really have any experience. I did not have any prior experience in marketing. I was focused on the game design. And so it was clear, okay, I needed to turn to some experts. And so I was very excited to find Launch Boom. And, the traditional wisdom is if you're going to do a Kickstarter, you need to bring your own audience, right? To have a successful launch, then you need a successful launch to have a successful campaign, or at least these things are very hand in hand. And so I think traditionally, as people are trying to build the largest email list, but only around 2% or so will typically convert and actually back you on Kickstarter. So I think, having the deposit system and getting people to actually put down $1 or $5, in advance, and, give them a really generous and cool offer saying like, hey, if you believe in us early on, and put down a refundable $1 or whatever, we'll give you this mini expansion, or, give you an upgrade to deluxe, and kind of get it's just such a wonderful marketing avenue and option for creators to have a really successful launch. And so I'm very grateful to LaunchBoom for having me help get that set up.
Of course. Well, you executed on it flawlessly. What did you actually give as like an offer for someone putting down the deposit in the pre-launch?
Yeah. So for people who put down $5 deposit, we gave them a free upgrade to the deluxe. So if they back the base game, we will actually upgrade them to deluxe in the pledge manager. So we wanted to make it worth our time and worth their time. So we thought that was like a very cool offer. And so we had about over 1,000 people actually put down the $5, which was great.
That's awesome. And was this your first time running meta ads?
Yes. I had no previous experience with meta ads.
Scary?
It was very scary at first. But then by the end, I was actually really enjoying it. And I would just like create ads and like test them, see how they were performing, also test ads in German. And that was fun to see some of those perform.
Oh, really? I didn't know that.
Yeah. So
awesome.
I'm offering the Biome on Kickstarter in both German and English.
That's very cool. Yeah. And can you walk us through like who you targeted on ads, if you remember? Like what were those audiences? Because I feel like there's like a lot of mysticism behind that. It's like, how do you find the people on Meta that actually are going to be interested in my game?
Yeah. So board games is of course the obvious one. So people who like, board games on Facebook. And I think nature was another one, people who like the outdoors, animals, nature. I'm trying to think. Travel was also one which is kind of interesting, that we tested out and in the early days was performing well. But I think nature and board games were the biggest two audiences. But the commonality there is we were also targeting people who, follow Kickstarter or crowdfunding or tech or startups or, technology. So people who are already open to trying new things and technology. So I think that helped a lot, which is part of the LaunchBoom process as well.
Yeah, I think one of the most interesting things is like, especially when talking to board game creators about targeting, and they're like, okay, well, of course I'm going to target, board game interests. Like, what else? Well, it's like, well, what's your theme of your game? Oh, okay. And in your case, like Biome, it's nature. And, in the case of botany, for example, it was like gardening and botany.
Yeah.
It's like Crooked Moon, it was like horror related themes. And like those were audiences in and of themselves that they could then target and then layer on, like you said. So if someone's listening, of course, if you're listening to this right now, you can do further targeting on your audiences. And that's what Leonie was saying, where you can say, okay, they're interested in nature, but then they're also interested in Kickstarter, for example. And that will help you get all these people, but then make it a little bit narrower and a little bit more qualified of an audience because, hey, these people already know what Kickstarter is. So it's really cool. It's really cool to hear that worked out well for you. That's awesome. And then when it came to the ads, do you remember what your best performing like ad image was?
Ooh. It was either a render of the Biome box, like with a brown background, so pretty simple. Or it was Biome, like a physical, like a photo of Biome with some like bougainvillea around it. So definitely appealed to like the nature folks. And I think the third one actually that performed best was like a photo of my fingers feeding some of the fruit, like some of my fruit tokens into like a nest with one of the bird cards in the background. So like also focusing on the component.
I have to look at that. That's awesome. Yeah, the box ads tend to do so well, and I'm glad that you said that. I mean, it's the truth. That's what it is. But it's like for creators, often like new creators are like, well, what am I going to make as my ad? Like I need to spend a whole bunch of money on production or do all these different things to make this ad perform really well. But oftentimes it's just a photo of the box that works really well, or a rendering of the box. In most cases, that's one of the top performing ads. Oh, excuse me, Leonie.
Oh, I was just going to say exactly to your point. Like I didn't pay any professional photographers. I did it all myself with my cell phone. So, no need to do anything crazy. Yeah.
Right. I mean, it's already like expensive enough in terms of, bringing the game to life. Like there's definitely costs, and there's cost of time, right? That you were talking about, like a lot of time put into it. And so it's like, there are definitely ways to bring down the costs in other areas and still be really, really effective. Like in the case of the ad imagery. Okay. So you talked about the pre-launch, you built up an audience, you had people put down a deposit, $5 deposit ahead of time that helped you with your ads, and that helped you with the initial, launch day and getting funded quickly. Now, you raised about $50,000 on day one. You ended up doing over $400,000. So what else did you do? How did you go from that to the $400K?
So I think there were 3 other things that come to mind pretty quickly. I'd say was one, already a year before the launch of my Kickstarter, I started an Instagram page for Biome and kind of have been documenting the game design journey and been interacting with other board game content creators and just, posting photos of the game and, often invite people into a glimpse of like the play testing, iterating by, showing that on my stories on Instagram. And so I think by the time I was ready to launch, I've actually have some friendships with some of the content creators and they know who I am. And so without me even having to ask people to post or share about the game, they shared the Kickstarter link all over Instagram. They're like, check out this game I've been following for the past year. Like, Leonie made this game. We're so excited for her. Like, check out Biome. So I think that was really special and cool to see. And so that was one, was just, organic, content creation and, building a community on Instagram. I also hosted, some in-person events. One, I hosted a bunch of demos at different board game stores around the Bay Area leading up to the launch and also during the campaign itself. And I think me having been at Essen Spiel last year also really helped kind of establish the game. People knew, oh, this is legit. And so I think just having a physical presence, getting the game in front of people. And I even asked my community before launch, if people who had been following my journey were on my email list, are any of you interested in getting a sample copy and maybe teaching the game to fellow board game nerds? And I had dozens of people reply and told me, me, can I get a copy? Like, I'd love to share Biome. And so I've had, since February, January, I've had like 10 of my precious sample copies floating around Europe, Canada, the US. And it's been so cool to see, then people get excited and post and share about the game. Some amazing like German YouTube influencers happen to play and like posted shared about it, which was great for the campaign. So yeah, I'd say it's just like saying yes to things, being in person and sharing the game. And then, really getting the community together and excited about Biome have all been really helpful.
That's awesome. Did you run ads during the campaign?
I did, yes. So we worked with Backer Camp, which is a boutique marketing agency based out of Spain. Wonderful couple, run Backer Camp, and so they managed our ads during the campaign.
Awesome. Was that a big driver of sales?
Yes, that was definitely also a big driver of sales.
Yeah, usually it is. I would say for most campaigns, especially once they get into like the 100,000 mark, which is a huge accomplishment for anyone to hit that.
Yeah,
it's like usually like ads are a big portion of it. That, and once you get into those levels, like Kickstarter itself as well, can drive quite a bit. Did you find that for your game as well?
I did. So we ran a survey during the campaign to see, something I was curious about. How did you hear about Biome? So we sent the survey right after people pledged on Kickstarter, and some people said through the community events, some people responded through SM Spiel, friends and family, word of mouth. And about 45% of people said ads, and another 45% of people said through Kickstarter. So that really, I didn't expect it to be so high. So Kickstarter definitely drove a lot of traffic to the campaign. So thank you, Kickstarter.
Yeah, it's pretty wild. I feel like in most cases it's somewhere in in games, especially like 30 to 40% range, upwards of 50% on some of them, which can be pretty crazy. Yeah, and it's really, I would say, like, it's not possible unless you have other traffic that you're using, or other traffic that you're driving yourself, like your email list or ads or conventions or social media, then that gets you up higher in the rankings. So it's awesome to see that you had that boost from Kickstarter's community as well. It can be very big. So I'd like to know, what is coming next for you? I mean, you recently finished up your campaign. So, but let's say after you've actually fulfilled on this, like what's next for you, for Leonie? Are you going to be creating new games? Is it this year? Just walk me through, your vision for this.
Thanks. Yeah. So definitely quite a few things on my plate, all good things. I feel very, very grateful. So late pledges are open right now on GameFound. But right up next, I'm working on translating the files into German, getting the files ready for print. We have a very, very aggressive schedule. I was like, we could probably deliver the games in September, October. And my partner was like, no, we can do it in August. I was like, I think September, let's just, push it till later just in case. And he's like, no, we can definitely deliver in August. It's like, okay. And now it looks like we'll probably be delivering in September. But at least, the files are pretty much ready, right? I've seen sample copies already from our manufacturer, Longpack. And just starting production. The games are going to be ready to ship beginning of July. And so once all of that is sorted out, I have plans to work on expansions for Biome, and I have ideas for future games as well.
All right. Well, we're looking forward to seeing those future games come out, or expansions for Biome and Biome itself.
Yeah.
Will be coming out later this year.
Yeah.
So Leonie, thank you so much. I really, really appreciate it. And I'm sure everyone else does that's listening to this right now, sharing your whole story. It's awesome. I would say, okay, one last thing is, any parting words for the aspiring creator that may be just kind of sitting on the sidelines and being like, I want to go do this thing, but maybe they feel a little bit of fear. What's the first step that they should take?
I'd say find your community. Everyone in the industry is so welcoming and eager to help each other out. So, if you're feeling overwhelmed or you don't know where to start, reach out to people in the industry. Feel free to reach out to me. And I can also offer my advice or help guide you in the right direction. There's so many awesome online playtesting communities, Protospiel Online, Break My Game, And I think if you don't feel like you're doing it alone, it feels so much more possible, and approachable.
Right.
So, it was only when I really surrounded myself with, my partner and his founder friends and entrepreneurial friends who were all following their passions and taking risks to build the thing that they wanted to build, that I was like, oh, I can do this too. And so you can too, is what I'm saying. And, find your community of supporters, and, yeah, you're going to have fun and just enjoy the process.
Love it. Love it. Love it. Love it. Couldn't have said it better myself.
Oh,
thank you, Leonie. Really, really appreciate it. And I hope you have a great day.
thank you so much, Mark. You too.
Thanks everyone for listening. Bye-bye.